Basically do another clinical trial, usually to go out and get an additional indication for their drug, which means that they can treat another condition for it, or an additional population. It may be only been approved for adults, and now it's for pediatric, but they use these kind of trials to do that. The question that's coming out that's increasingly of interest when we talk about big data is, and especially for some of the folks that now, remember we talked about how value has to be articulated, why not use actual treatment? Because if we've got an electronic medical health record and we know who took it, let's actually use the real world evidence that actually occurred and see whether this drug actually did have an impact on this subpopulation that now is being tested instead of a phase 4 trial. And increasingly what we're starting to see is there's a real trade-off between, does it make more sense to mine your data, to do big data analytics, as opposed to spend the hundreds of millions of dollars to do another trial.
Yeah, just to comment on that, because even if you spend $1 billion and the expedited review, it doesn't mean that you're going to get it approved on the form. And more often than not, they're requiring additional studies, and these studies can take 5 to 7 years.
Right.
And so I think what's going to happen is you're going to see fewer and fewer, whether it's eventually the medical device space or even in the pharma space coming on the market.
Yeah, approval does not mean reimbursement.
That's right.
And it does nothing to have something out there that nobody's going to pay for it.
And increasingly, I mean, it's been very clear in Europe already, approval does not mean reimbursement. I think we're increasingly going to be seeing in the US as well. Approval will not mean reimbursement. Right now, if you look at the stock prices of companies, the day the FDA approves their drug, you see a tremendous spike in their stock price. I don't know if that's indeed going to be the case going forward.
Which is why there's a big shortage of health economists and outcomes research. So if you have kids in college, tell them that's where they need to focus.
Yeah,
you cannot, I mean,
companies' revenue projections if they're going in and a phased approach to the market also. I mean,
Yeah, it starts to get huge. I mean, it's not a, and you know, some of my favorite companies, they have some really cool technology. I love them. They're absolutely amazing pieces of scientific and technical insight that are there. And the hardest part of my job is going in there and saying, this is brilliant, but I can't see how you're going to get paid for it. and that's, you know.
But I think this also, and you made one other point, I could be wrong, but I'm going to guess, not guess, but I think this could be true, is that I think that a lot of these new products coming to market, if it's a new variation or a new modality, how it's delivered, if this is cheaper and still working, why go there? So I do think it has to be more breakthrough to break through how things are changing right now with that service or with that product or what that may be.
Yeah.
We just have to be, as service providers or device manufacturers, how do we get in and really serve this big healthcare system that's changing?
Yeah. So last year I had a chance personally to learn about what that really means on a upfront personal basis. I started out my life as a neurobiologist, so I think at least I'm not an idiot when it comes to like looking at some of the scientific stuff around it. And lo and behold, I actually had to take a look and understand cancer drugs. And one of the things that actually I was appalled. I was completely 100% appalled. The way that right now you can get a cancer drug approved is you can talk about something called progression-free survival. That's for a tumor. What that means is that you can get a drug approved if you can demonstrate that after you give the drug, the tumor didn't get any bigger, or basically didn't get any bigger than what it was before. It has nothing to do whether a drug actually extended somebody's life at all. I mean, the tumor can stay the same size. The drug will be successful and the patient can die. Is what really is sort of going on. And so a lot of these things that you're talking about, it can't just be the same old, is increasingly becoming the case that, even among getting it adopted by formulary directors and various providers, or getting it adopted by payers, or getting all these things, all of a sudden, it's now becoming a different type of world.
So, based on what you just said, means that revenue recognitions by all these providers patient capacity, right? It's no longer just
agree. It's very much behind the times. The other part that's coming out that's relatively new for the industry is, since I'm allowing you to get a dry out before you go through all the trials, okay, now you have to really monitor the adverse events that are coming in. Because remember, I didn't get the chance to look at, in a clinical trial setting, not only did the drug work, but did it harm people other ways. One of my clients didn't do a very good job of doing adverse event monitoring. In fact, they had their drugs out there and they lost 10,000 adverse events, and they didn't report them to the FDA. They're facing, I think, at the last count, it's a $2 billion fine with a B.
With a capital B.
With a capital B. So there's some things that are going on that the industry is being all of a sudden being forced now to pay attention to.
So back on point, just quickly
Yeah.
on one thing that, so this, not just outcome based in generalized, but I mean, do you think that, again, big data analysis would have been able to identify effectiveness of Lipitor, for example? Right now, 20%, 25% actually get real value out of it, but, everybody's on it. Are we going to be able to monitor that, and do you expect a cost-effective outcome from it? Additionally, I guess on the balance side is what we talked about before, was impact on insurance. It's if all of a sudden you're so trackable on an individual basis, how does that happen? What are the economic basis on your insurability and other.
So to the first point, yes, because what's happened is, and one of the newest regulations to come out of Europe, and now it's going to be adopted in Japan and the US, is what's called data transparency, which means that the reason that Lipitor and some of the other drugs were able to stay on the market for such a long time before they found certain things is because it used to be that if you were a life sciences company, you could get your product out there but didn't have to release the detailed patient level data to actually demonstrate how you managed to get approval for your drug. That has now changed, and now basically almost all of the major companies, including medical device and pharmaceutical companies, are now being forced to release redacted and anonymized but patient level data to allow the really, really bright people at places like UCSD and other people that are doing research to actually go through their data and actually see whether their product actually did what they said it was going to do. Because there's a wonderful thing you can do with statistics, which is that you can take some data sets, and by choosing who to include or not include in a data set, it's amazing how results can go from being spectacularly good to spectacularly bad very, very quickly. Now that there's going to be third parties that are actually going to be monitoring that. So the first question is the Lipitor, are Lipitors going to happen in the future? Yes, but they're going to be caught a lot faster because there's going to now be a mechanism in place for third parties to look at that data sets. Now the second part of the question is, what happens when we talk about individualized data and people's, that kind of stuff? This anonymization process and making sure that you're consistent with HIPAA and all these other privacy things is not a trivial item at all. I mean, if you're going to utilize that kind of data that people are putting on their cell phones and social media and other things, it is not an easy effort to then take that, anonymize it, and then, again, we talk about master data management, having one version of the truth. Well, imagine how hard it is to have one version of the truth when you've anonymized everything.
Yeah, I think master data still plays a role because that's the reliable record
Yeah.
part of it. But I think it's the adoption and acceptance of more unstructured, or what I call, maybe halo data from social media and other, it just provides another data point, but I just think we have to be a little bit more accepting. And again, that's what I say is the conflict in adoption and highly regulated industry, but very necessary.
Well,
Thank you very much.
thank you so
Yeah.
much. We're going to consolidate slightly right now, and again, it's because we've given a lot of information. I think we've all got a lot of things to think about. As you can see, we kind of set up some spaces in the back to be able to facilitate some breakout sessions. And so, although our intent was to, let the chair of this group, Ken, kind of help drive some of the things that might be interesting talking points, I think that what we may want to do is break out. I'm going to make the recommendation that I think that we, particularly with the Deloitte presentation on this shift, and we look at the local economies and the things that we know are happening in Southern California on not just big data, which is obviously one that, at least from my point of view, is always sort of an overriding thing. The increasing scope of what big data will be with the conversion of monitorability, as we talked about with mobility from Qualcomm's efforts, from Apple's efforts and others. And then the final elephant in the room is, the inevitability that all of our DNA is going to play into personalized medicine fairly quickly. We may have some topics to talk about in this post-ACA world. How does the changing economics and the technologies that we have available with our domain expertise, how can we look at things that we might be able to, as a group, at least address, maybe get some good ideas on? So I'm going to ask if you can, we can break out in any way that you want, but I'm going to suggest like data security as being kind of a topic that we may want to talk about in one group, and if so, somebody identify a table and go to it. What are the topics we need to think about?
That's what everybody's like.
Yeah, okay, well then, pick a table, find a good group, have a conversation, come up with a couple topics, and we're going to hopefully be able to then gear down to two topics at near the end of the day. So, why don't we break out right now? And again, I think there's still coffee and others out there. And after you finish your meetings, we'll be able to. Our goal is to have lunch around 12:30. I think that's going to be a tough one to achieve. So let's call it 1 o'clock.
So Gary, you want to break up right now?
Let's just go to the breakout rather than, unless you want to address these. Do you want to have some guidance, or do you think that I think that we've got enough topics on the table right now to at least have some discussion points. So here are things that you may want to try.
Okay, so, not to keep it agree, but just, let's vote on it.
Okay.
Do we need to break out, or do we just all sit here and say,
Yeah.
we've heard a lot of good stuff, so is data security one of them?
Okay. Does anybody, how many people think that data security is a critical component in this too?
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, boom.
So I think that's a good idea, probably maybe pick 3 or 4 and as a team, kind of discuss.
Okay.
Maybe do a time allocation. What do you think? That way, then you're not having conflicting
Right.
views of 4 different tables and you're not learning from each other, right? This is a suggestion.
No, I agree 100%. Okay, so first of all, we've got a small group of people that believe on that one. What other topics do you think that we should cover from the information that we've covered thus far?
I'd like to nominate Ken to maybe pick one, because he's in a big healthcare system.
Yes, he is. And I was, again, I was going to make an assumption that the data security may be high, but I'm always.
Have your number one burning issue for people.
Your problem statement.
Problems, something like that.
Well, one of